Hello, my name is Mark Graham, and a big thank you to SNS for putting on this great virtual conference. I am the co-founder of commonsku, a CRM, order management, and e-commerce platform designed for the promotional products industry. I have the privilege today of exploring the topics of changing customer needs and purchasing habits with four industry leaders. My guests include Joel Halberg of McKenzie SewOn, Lucas Guariglia of Rowboat Creative, Tom Meissner of iCoStore, and Traci Miller of Color 3 Embroidery. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. We're going to have a great day today. Our first guest is Tom Meissner. Based in Tempe, Arizona, Tom is the president of iCoStore, an online company store provider that sells branded corporate apparel and promotional products. Tom has developed an expertise in the print-on-demand segment that makes it possible to have unlimited product selection without the burden of traditional inventory. Tom brings a wealth of experience to our topic, given his expertise in the B2B company store space. Tom, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Mark.
So Tom, let's talk about the print-on-demand trend. I know this is something that's near and dear to your heart. Why is this particularly relevant now to your B2B customers?
We've been doing it for almost 20 years, and it seems today that it is much more relevant. There's a lot of reasons why people want print on demand. You do have an unlimited selection, as you mentioned, of products, name brands, and there's really no risk of inventory. So that in itself is huge. The trends, obviously, that are happening right now, where everybody's wanting to be conservative with, waste and such. We have no waste. I mean, you only produce what is ordered, and so there's nothing more at this point. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. Stuff being in stock, out of stock, it really doesn't matter. We're able to just switch styles in and out and keep things fresh.
Right. And speaking of trends, Tom, are there any other major trends that you're seeing now in the B2B company store space that listeners might be interested in?
It's interesting. Name brands have become much more popular. I think for a while it was just, hey, we want to get somebody a T-shirt or we want to get somebody something. And now I think they're thinking about it a little bit more, saying, I actually want to get them something that they actually want and they want to wear.
Right.
And they're proud to wear. That's something that's been important.
And I know that kitting is also something that has become massively relevant now, given work from home and virtual events. How has kitting impacted your online company store experience and what your customers are asking for?
It's been a big thing this year. Obviously, with people not being in the workplace, we've had a lot of companies with it want to give people dollars on the store, and then people can go on, order whatever they want, and then we're drop shipping everything to people's homes. And so, starting in about October and still going on now, we've had tens of thousands of just individual drop ships where typically you send us something for the holiday party or you send something to the company and they hand it out. At this point, it's all everything's going to people's homes. And so obviously it puts a little more stress on just the shipping and receiving department. However, it's a huge service to the client. That right there has been it's been great. And we're set up for it. We've done it forever, but this year it has really become a thing.
Right. I can imagine. So I know that promotion and marketing is essential for company store providers like yourself, Tom. What are some of the things that you can do to drive repeat business to your various program sites?
There's a few things. I mean, when I look at company stores, we focus on business to business and not really to consumer. So when you work and find a client, we're basically looking to take on their entire program, not just the store side of things, but also their special orders, and you really get in tight with them. Right. So we encourage them to use that store as kind of their central hub. So things like putting birthdays and anniversaries. We've got functionality that will, when a birthday happens, It will generate an email and send them a happy birthday message and put dollars in their account and lead them to the store. So birthdays, anniversaries, also incentive type things have been important. So for manufacturing companies, attendance awards and safety and things like that, if you can keep funneling all of those things into a program, it makes it very successful because there's a lot of touches. People are getting notifications automatically when they hit a milestone or do something that is earning them points. That's one way. I think keeping items fresh on the store and then marketing that. Companies use their intranet to put up, I don't want to say ads, but basically to put up postings on there about the new products. We can do e-blasts with them. They'll tie it into their social media. So out of sight, out of mind, I think, with the company stores. You need to keep them fresh. You need to have a reason to go back to the store. So that's a super important piece.
Right, and this whole idea of set it and forget it just doesn't exist, and that's ultimately why it is you're making money on the stores, is your continued investment and promotion of them.
There's too much work that goes into putting up a store to have it be just sit there and disappear. And so obviously it's part of our job and part of the customer's job, and we work with them on a marketing plan. We try to plan out at least 6 months, hopefully a year, on what we're doing, be it seasonality, be it around holidays, be it a little bit of both of those things, and then product launches, brand launches, and things like that. So if there's a reason to go to the store, if it's the same stuff and you're trying to push people there, it's not going to do well. But when it is new stuff or there's a special and things like that, then yes, that definitely helps.
Right. And Tom, in closing, I wanted to ask a question about the segment of the market that you focus on at iCoStore. Of course, there are the micro stores, and then there are the huge RFP-driven stores that you typically see at the Fortune 500 level. And I think that you're more focused on the more mid-sized store. Can you talk a little bit more about that and why that's an exciting space for you to be focused on?
Yep. So not having a lot of inventory. I mean, we do carry some of the things that we need to have in stock, some of the hard goods, but for the most part, we want to run on demand, and that's a little bit different segment. The real big guys do want inventory on things, a little bit deeper inventory. That's just not our market. And so our focus really has been that $100,000 to $250,000 client, kind of under the big RFP area, off the radar of the big guys in the industry that are really looking for those programs where they have to stock them.
Right.
Inventory doesn't make sense until you get to a certain level, and so we kind of are sliding in under that threshold. I mean, we have stores that are bigger than that, but they're heavy apparel, and which is probably the most important piece that you can do on demand. With all the sizes, colors, and styles, that just gets to be too expensive to try to have a good selection. So that $100,000 to $250,000 range is really a sweet spot, and we've bumped that minimum up. For a while, you can be down below that, but as you continue to grow and realize, you look at the return on it, there's a lot of work that goes into the stores if you really want to do them right and service them. And so that 100,000 we kind of found is a threshold. And depending on how your company is set up, you can do smaller stores. We did for a long time, and we're very successful with them. But as we start adding features and a lot more service around them, we found that bumping that minimum up has been a big help.
Well, and it's so exciting to see how you've been able to leverage technology to be able to go after that segment, because as you say, a lot of the larger distributors, they've got these infrastructures that are focused around inventory and warehousing and all of the shipping needs that push them up into the multi-million-dollar contracts. And up until now, there's not been a lot of focus on that middle market size company store program between $100,000 and $250,000. So it seems like you're very well positioned in a growing segment to cater to this market. So, but Tom, thank you so much. This has been a real pleasure to speak with you, and thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us.
Thanks so much. I appreciate the time, Mark.
And up next is Lucas Guariglia. Lucas is the CEO and co-founder of Rowboat Creative in Chicago, Illinois. Rowboat is a full-spectrum merchandising company with a focus on apparel, promotional products, and experiential events. Housed in a beautiful warehouse space in Logan Square, Rowboat is known for their thoughtful approach to community building, strong company culture, and a fiercely unique brand in the Chicago market. Lucas has a creative DNA which shines the brightest when he's working with some of the world's top creative clients. It's through this lens that I want to explore how he sees changing customer needs and purchasing habits. Welcome, Lucas. It's so great to have you with us.
Great to be here, Mark. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, we're going to try to fit about an hour's worth of content into about 7 to 9 minutes here. So let's get on with it. All right. I want to
We can
talk
go
a
on
little
for
bit
days
about
together.
exactly. Really appreciate our great friendship. All right. I want to start talking about events. How can you help your customers plan their promotional spending now that we're in the age of COVID and in-person events aren't taking place anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big thing that's been on everybody's radar with the onset of COVID. But, what we've been able to do, I think, is we try to dive directly into, sometimes it feels like it's almost money out of our pocket because we're trying to be very conscious of budgets, be very conscious of what's going on in the world and what's going to help for the longevity of things. We really try to dive directly into what is going to be most beneficial. So we try to immerse ourselves into the company culture. We try to immerse ourselves into what they're trying to actually get across. For us, it really is becoming part of that company. Yeah, we are, on the other side, and we don't really consider them clients. I think to us, everybody is just more of a partner. And so we try to have it be a complete two-way street, bring ourselves into their position, try to use our leverage of just experience and connections that we've made over the years, and really try to bring some thoughtfulness to the table of what could be beneficial to the event.
Right. I think that in one of the ways that I actually first came across you, Lucas, was you had produced this really cool experiential event for, I think, the Chicago Marathon. And you had T-shirts on site. You had this a decorating gun where you were logoing I think, the sleeves of the shirts. And it was just, the energy was just off the charts. And now with in-person events that are being canceled, I'm curious as to how client opportunities like that have evolved in the age of virtual. Are you seeing those types of clients just canceling their budget altogether, or are they shifting that somehow into something unique that can be done in a virtual basis?
I think everybody, hit pause right at the onset and just tried to figure out, all right, let's level the playing field and let's just figure out how we approach this. But, we have so many partners that are marketing agencies. We're kind of on the agency side ourselves in a lot of aspects. But we saw the flip to everybody being at home. So how do you still interact and how do you still bring that sort of energy and passion at home? So, the onset of a lot of kitting, a lot of, these custom packaging, and making people feel like you're still touching them, you're still getting the concept of what that company or brand's energy is bringing to the table. But how do you do that when you're not there to actually physically engage? They can't see you smile, they can't see your energy. So, it flipped to that very quickly. We have been running those sorts of programs, and that's nothing new for the industry in terms of employee incentive programs and e-commerce stores. But we just tried to put our spin on it and still do it very unique and still really embody that energy that you want to bring to those people who are receiving those packages or those kits. So it was a little bit of a different spin on everything, but that's kind of where we try to position ourselves.
Right. I'm curious if you see the future as hybrid, Lucas, when we return to normal, or whether you see more of a hard return to the way that we used to do things in terms of exclusively in person, where this whole virtual thing just tapers off and becomes a bit of a sideshow after the fact. Do you have a crystal ball in terms of how we might return?
Honestly, I mean, you and I, kind of even talked, off radar about this. I really think that it's going to be hybrid. Whether it's just in relation to in-person events, I think that people are going to be a lot more conscious and savvy about budgeting, and realizing that maybe it's not the most beneficial to dump all of this promo and marketing, budget into doing in-person events when you can still have that sort of impact and interaction virtually. The same would be for employees. I think that there's a great deal of empowerment for having employees working virtually, but then the hybrid aspect, like we were discussing, of coming in, whether that's X amount of days a week or months, or to still keep that vibe and that company culture, and still have those personal interactions. I really think that that's just going to be across the board, whether that's company events, trade shows, or also just company culture, just in general in the offices.
Yeah, I tend to agree and excited about things getting back to a state of normalcy. But what I hope is that marketers are going to bring back budget for in-person promotional opportunities, but I don't think they're going to necessarily do away with the budgets that they saw working so well for them in a virtual basis. And it's almost like marketers can have their cake and eat it too right now, where they can reach out and be in the company of someone in person, but at the same time, they can reach a customer that might be halfway around the world that doesn't have the opportunity to fly into, say, Chicago and attend an event. And I think that's very exciting for us in terms of, it almost feels like a bit of a double dip for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's always going to be people who, if it's a smaller company or if it's a smaller shop, or people just looking to dive into the industry that maybe don't have the means to get out to a PPAI, or ISS. And so you can get across to those people. I mean, you can also cast that net even wider because, maybe they just don't want to be completely, immersed in a 4-day long event, and they just want to pop in for 20 minutes because there's a really influential speaker that is there. So I agree. I think it's going to be just a hybrid, and it's just going to kind of be an evolution of everything that the industry has seen so far, but just with a new spin.
Yeah, well, it's great. I think the future is very bright. I wanted to pivot and talk a little bit about creative projects, because you are the king of this. What are some of the most creative projects? Yeah, no pressure. What are some of the most creative projects that you've had the opportunity to work on in the last 12 months?
I honestly, as soon as I kind of caught wind of this, the concept of this, it's just such a tough thing because we've seen so many things come to light and having to pin it down to one thing. But I think the thing that came to mind, we did some really amazing projects and some kitting programs with a larger national cannabis company, which, in the industry, we've all seen that they've just come out swinging in the last handful of years. But, we took the concept, again, of them not being able to be there in person to touch people with, certain items, and also just really engage with them. And so we spun it, and it was right in the midst of summer. And so we did this really interesting kind of at-home barbecue kits, that spun from slides to joggers to these custom riveted grills to spatulas, and so we really kind of took the concept of what is everybody doing right now? It's July, everybody's sitting at home, having the opportunity to barbecue. That's the best thing that we can do to kind of give us a sense of normalcy. So that was a really, really interesting project to scale up because as many either know or don't know, I mean, we do so much outside of just apparel. So being able to scale those things up, and to go back to kind of my first point of really just immersing ourselves in what is that brand trying to embody? How do we put ourselves in the consumer position to really feel what that feels like to get those? And then, on the logistics side, what does that look like for us to be kitting and packaging and doing all this customization for thousands of drop ships, and, trying to maintain that while UPS and FedEx and everybody's kind of in this huge chaos sphere. So, that was definitely a really interesting project to see the reaction, to see the impact, and to kind of keep these brands moving along while everybody was, kind of starting to stand still and scared as to what to do next.
Yeah. I'm curious, just using that one example, and that's a great example. Thank you for that. Do you get a sense that the promotional merchandise is landing in a different and arguably more profound way, given that it was sent to the customer at their home as opposed to being distributed, say, en masse at one central location? Do you have a sense of that? In terms of the different response?
I do. I think it's more personal. We've a lot of the, either the brands that we work with or larger, we kind of hate the concept of the quote unquote influencer, but, we've seen the rise of that even pre-COVID.
Yep.
And so people feeling that personal touch, whether that's a handwritten note and, on the other side of it comes all of the impact of social media and the unboxing and somebody feeling special because they got this personalized, pack that has, a couple things for them specifically. We flip that to the employee side and people feeling that. So I really do. I feel like it's way more personal, and you're solidifying that engagement with the consumer as opposed to, okay, you're just kind of a cog in the wheel and there's 4,000 people that are passing through this trade show and everybody gets a t-shirt. That's great. And there's certainly impact in there, but when you can tie in that personal element, I think that's, as a company, that's where we try to really shine, and we try to create those events. We try to create that interaction, whether it's the garment decoration side of it. So, I'm happy. That's exciting for us and for the industry, I think, to really be focusing in on the personal side as opposed to just, really kind of churning and burning stuff out just because, people love free stuff.
All right, Lucas. That's all the time that we have here today. It's always a shame to have to cut things off with you because we could go on forever. Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to chat with you, and look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, the whole SNS team. Pleasure to be here. And, as an industry, I think that, there's a big upside to all of this. And, we don't just need to look at the demise of everything. There's a lot of creativity that we can all bring up from the ashes.
And I'd like to introduce our next guest, Traci Miller. Based in Warren, Ohio, Traci is the president of Color 3 Embroidery, a contract embroiderer with a specific focus on the distributor market. Traci has an extensive background in embroidery techniques given her years of producing distributor orders for their end clients. In this discussion, we are going to explore how Traci sees customer needs evolving, specifically through the lens of decoration and embroidery. Welcome, Traci. It's great to have you here.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for having me today.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. So my first question is, how are consumer demands evolving when it comes to decoration, and what creative solutions are you providing to satisfy those customer needs?
Sure. So the demands are coming from, I would say, primarily from the retail market. Even with the distributor market, their clients are looking to emulate what they see in stores or see in national large brands. So we have to kind of emulate what's happening in that market with the private brands, with their marketing logos, and um, to really match them up and make them look at that high end level quality is what they're really looking for.
Is there an example that comes to mind, Traci, of a retail inspired project that a distributor has brought to you that has been particularly difficult to replicate domestically?
Sure. If you look at some of the larger retail brands, and I'm talking about the apparel brand that gets distributed through all kinds of national retailers, but they have, for example, you'll see a silicone patch that is their logo and
Right.
emblem. They want that to match their client's logo. Well, in a silicone patch, you have a longer production time. You have a lot of nuances you have to kind of address up front. And given the world of our contract world, sometimes, we have 5 to 7 days to turn jobs. So a lot of that takes so
Right.
much interaction, with your client to get there. And I think that's probably the number one challenge is that debate and conversation that you can have up front to solve that and actually match that level of brand that they want at the end.
Right. And it's almost unfair because if you're dealing with something that is an offshore produced item, it may be 3 to 6 months in development. It's most assuredly being embroidered on panels so they can get exact placements before, of
Absolutely.
course, it's produced into a hat or a piece of apparel. And you're largely dealing with finished garments and with a 5 to 7 day turn. So it's almost an impossible comparison. So you work wonders, don't you?
It's true. Yeah, kind of. It is true. And, hats are another great example of that, right? Because when you speak of the panels, you have unlimited range on that hat that you can decorate at that point. But once a cap
Right.
is finished, we have banding, we have keyhole openings in the back, we have bills that are made out of different products. So we have hard bills, we have soft bills. All of those prove to be difficult when you get them into a bulk producing finished product on a machine. But I mean,
Right.
there's ways around some of that, and we can get creative in those solutions. We can fit things on different areas of the hat that make sense and try to get you close to that finished product that you're really looking for. And when we're talking overseas, you need large volume to produce that. Where we're coming up against that is in that smaller short run product, which is what a lot of the
Right.
programs are inside the promotional products world, right? So we have to produce 12 hats that look like somebody that ran 3,000. It's a little bit different
Right.
approach that you have to take. But between the patch applications, embroidery in different areas, laser etched apparel you can laser etch a hat in a way. If it's 100% polyester, you've got this really cool opportunity to maybe engrave the bill of the hat, which we have no other way to decorate once it's finished. So there's some real
Right.
creative
Right.
options you can have if you have a product that you're trying to emulate.
Right, right. Well, I think that's actually a wonderful segue to my next question. What are some of the most interesting types of decoration applications today? You've mentioned laser etch and you've mentioned a couple of things, but are there maybe two or three things you'd like to highlight in terms of unique applications for 2021?
Sure. I think given the retail market and what we're seeing, even online, even Etsy stores and that type of
Right.
market that our clients are seeing, the
Yeah.
patch market's getting really hot. Be it leather patch, woven, all of that is applied with embroidery machines. From our perspective, we have to do that to get them to adhere. But you see, I guess the unique placements is the really key to that. It's not just the product that we're putting on. So you do have the silicone patches, you have the laser patches, you have woven. 3D
Right.
embroidery is starting to come back even heavier, which
Yep.
it's interesting. Over the last 15 years, it kind of peaked and then it went away, but I see it starting to come back more in a demand. So all of those things are becoming really popular. And again, they're all driven by what they're seeing in the retail market. So when we see it there,
Right.
we know that we're going to have to figure out how to produce that on the back end.
Right. In 5 to 7 days on a finished piece of apparel,
Right.
which is always the challenge. Um,
It's always
let's
a
talk
challenge. Yeah,
specifically. Yeah, exactly. But that's what makes it fun, right? That's why we are in this crazy industry, right? um,
absolutely.
I want to talk specifically about textured products, and we know that they're a big trend at the moment. What are your go-to techniques for embroidering these types of products?
On textured products, I mean, we see a lot of the beautiful blankets are made out of fleece and they have a really high pile, or you have the Sherpa fleece. Those are super textured, and standard embroidery just isn't going to work.
Yeah,
The art file that you created originally for a hat is not going to sew well on those products. So, a lot of what we do from the digitizing standpoint is that we're creating a background fill that is a light knockdown stitch that kind of evens that sewing field. And now you've
yeah,
got the ability to lay down stitches that just pop off of that instead of getting lost.
yeah,
I
yeah,
see it often, especially in the Sherpa pullovers that I see. This logo looks fantastic on a polo shirt. You put it on that, and it just disappears. So you have to have
yeah,
a different file. You have to set up the background to really kind of prep it to accept that embroidery in a way that makes it really pop for the client.
yeah, yeah. Well, and we've seen with COVID locking so many people at home that blankets are absolutely exploding. And, I've often reflected that one of the biggest tragedies in decorating a blanket is having this beautiful logo on one side, but then you look on the backside and you've got this ugly white embroidery backing. And I feel like that's where really thoughtful approaches to embroidery, or even moving away from embroidery and moving more to a patch, really creates a much more retail style experience, as opposed to it looks good on one side, but it's kind of promo-y on the other side. So it's nice to be able to nice to see you talking about that.
Yeah, it is, and that is one of the challenges of embroidery, and it's just kind of a nature of the beast, if you will. I mean, you need the backing to support the fabric so that you can get these really unique and detailed stitches in there so they show up the way you need them to. But
Yep.
there are ways to work around that, and like you said, there's different approaches. I think laser does a good job of giving you a solid fleece blanket that you're carving out the image, and then the back
Right.
is of course clean. It's perfect, right? So,
Right.
there's solutions. It's just, again, I guess I'll speak to the approach you take to sell that to your client has to be thought through well before we get it to produce
Right.
it for you. You know.
Right. Right. So, Traci, what advice do you have for those distributors that are working with customers that might be wedded to a traditional decoration location? So, center imprints, left chest. How do you encourage distributors and their end clients to think a little bit more outside the box when it comes to decorating locations?
Sure. I mean, it's a classic issue, right? In our industry, it's like left chest for
Yeah.
embroidery is standard. I think we probably, and honestly, probably 80% of what we do is left chest work. It just is.
Yep.
Because it's what people know and it's simple. When the clothing distributors come out with different garments, we try to have that conversation with our clients saying, hey, look at this piece. You've got a really interesting placement opportunity here in that sleeve. We now have a color block
Right.
that, go that direction with that. Or, the key in the back might be the place to put that. And especially when we're looking at files, saying it's just too much embroidery, maybe on the left chest. Let's split this logo up. Maybe it can be, 2 or 3 different placements that won't look, I guess, NASCAR-y. We can make it look very corporate
Yeah.
driven and clean, but you have really cool opportunities in some of the design patterns that are coming out in the garments. So we try to
Yeah.
kind of troubleshoot that early on, especially when we're reviewing the product lines for the year with a client. We want to be able to help them kind of, for me, the more educated our clients are, the better products they sell and the better
Yeah.
opportunity we have for a partnership throughout the year to give their clients a really solid value prop at the end.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I'm smiling at your response because I recognize I'm wearing a traditional white long sleeve shirt with a left chest print. What actually makes this a kind of a cool shirt to wear is the fact that it's got this detailed story on either of the sleeves. I know it's not embroidery, and this would be a little crazy to be embroidered, of course, on the sleeves, but just talking about screen printing is just another classic example of how to evolve beyond just the traditional decorating locations.
It really is. And there's so many opportunities. I mean, if you look at a shirt, you've got all kinds of spots that they can be decorated. It really just comes down to kind of the temperature of your client. How expressive do
Yeah.
they want to be? I will say
Yep.
that there are challenges with embroidery with products. We have to watch for zippers and seams, and there's certain challenges that we have to face. It's a little bit different, but I would say that we're fairly good at really finding that solution that makes everybody happy in the end. And
Right.
um,
Right.
the retail market drives that too. If you see something on the
Right.
back lower left shoulder, suddenly everybody wants that, and we have to figure out how to make
Right.
sure that works from a
Right.
production standpoint as well.
Yeah. Well, in closing, I just want to thank you, Traci, for sharing all of this expertise, and I also want to not only thank you for spending the time with us, but also thank you on behalf of the industry because it's great to have great blank product that we have access to, but it's people like yourself on the decorating side that are really delivering the magic that clients are ultimately buying. It's the decorated side of this business and all of the boundaries that you're pushing in this space that really give this industry a great name. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much. I so appreciate the partnerships that this trifecta really has between the clothing distributors, ourselves, and then the promotional products people that are out there really
Right.
addressing the market directly. The three of us together make just a great partnership that it's a lot of fun, and I enjoy it every year.
Yep.
25 years later, I still
Yep.
enjoy it constantly. So
Yeah. You bet. Well, thank you so much, Traci. That was wonderful.
thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
And now I'd like to welcome Joel Halberg. Based in Eugene, Oregon, Joel is the director of sales at McKenzie SewOn, a full-service promotional products distributor with in-house decorating, fulfillment, and company store capabilities. Joel's customer base includes some of the world's most renowned B2C brands whose customers and fans have high expectations for unique and creative merchandise. Joel, it's great to have you here with us today.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's jump right into it. You mentioned to me in the past that companies with strong communities are ideal customers for you. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah. With the constant shift of rate of change, one of the things that we've identified as a company is that there's a growing trend of people following podcasts and even video game streamers are building communities. And it's that community development that lends itself to promotional products, whether it's apparel or specialty items. We found an awesome niche by looking at who has kind of a community following and who's putting out great content. And when you've got engaged fans and a good community, most of them appreciate a solid decorated apparel item.
And my guess is that a lot of people in that space, the gamers and the podcasters, as you mentioned, um, are probably not too up on how to sell promotional merchandise to their community of followers. So I suspect that this has been an amazing niche for you to focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this before, but I think of our industry when I first came in 16 years ago. It seemed a little bit like Red from the movie Shawshank Redemption.
That's
He's the
right.
guy who can locate things from time to time if you need it, and he puts his fair markup on it, and he's the guy you call when you need something. I think that's almost completely gone. It's definitely shifted. Now you almost need to position yourself as the savvy marketing intern that brings a specific skill set to the team. And so these
Right.
content creators, they're not retail stores. They know enough to be dangerous, and they can communicate about what types of designs and products they'd like to offer. But really, it's the expertise of everything else that creates all that value on our end, and they trust
Right.
us
Right.
to show them the right way to manage that business.
Right. So I know that you and your team are experts in company stores. So I want to shift a question towards that area. What changes are you seeing in company stores in terms of the types of products your customers are buying now?
Yeah, great question. Like you mentioned, we do a lot of different types of stores, whether we're focusing on products that ultimately end up in a consumer's hands or products that might go in a corporate store that end up in team members' hands. I would say the
Right.
biggest kind of general trend that we've seen is that um, people are working from home more often. And so
Right.
there is a lot of emphasis being put on things that can make homework more efficient or can be a nice link to other people that they used to see regularly. So it wasn't surprising to us that this last December, it seemed like the nation's supply of blankets were out of stock. We did a great job of
Yes.
selling blankets through those channels. But, more interestingly, I think that with the rate of change being so high, there are still some very consistent things that haven't changed. One of those things being specifically that we've always had this mantra of, can you think like your customer's customer, or do you understand who the end user of the store is?
Right.
It's drastically different if you've got a corporate entity looking to outfit their sales team versus a warehouse company that's allowing their team members in the back room to make purchases. And the success of those products is how well you truly understand what the goals of that are.
Right. Right. So is there a particular demographic that is driving the change in your company right now, and what's important to them?
Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily one key characteristic of age or the types of buyers that we're working with, but it does seem like many of our corporate accounts are shifting to a little more relaxed product
Right.
base. Whether they're allowing their team members to wear products that they're going to be presenting in, or they're just making a weekend offering, it does seem like there is a
Right.
shift to things that are more comfortable.
And with regard to decoration, because I know there's a lot of folks listening to this that are interested in the world of decoration, do you find that the types of decoration you're employing these days is shifting in a different direction because of some of the changes you just mentioned, or is it the same old, same old?
Yeah, great question. So we've been decorators for 34 years. We started with just embroidery, and we kind of pride ourselves on having really solid embroidery quality. But
Right,
I definitely have seen a shift. The types of graphics that we're doing, specifically for corporate, you can put an insurance company logo on a lot of product, and that kind of accomplishes the main goal of getting the name out there and giving somebody something awesome that has value to them. But when you can take a graphic and enhance it by dropping the insurance logo into a graphic that represents what
yeah,
people in that area like to participate in, and then
yeah,
present that in terms of a screen print or a transfer of some kind, heat transfer or a sublimated product, those
right,
tend to be drastically more successful in terms of people appreciating it, liking it, wearing it, and that garment
right.
staying close to the top of the drawer.
Right, as opposed to just being tossed out, or maybe not even making it into the drawer, which is always the sort of the infamy of our industry. I love the fact that you're talking about how to make a piece of insurance company merchandise cool, and I suppose if there's anyone who could do it, it would be you. But in all seriousness, it's an excellent point, because I think for so long our industry has been the one color, one location imprint industry, or the left chest, center chest screen print industry. And while that's certainly still a prominent part of what it is that we do, I think those that are really connecting with this new customer base, or even revitalizing brands that may have been a little bit tired and making them relevant in the promotional merchandise space, are doing exactly what you're talking about. It's adding a little bit of color, a little bit more life, a little bit more of a dynamic nature to the logo and the imprint. And I think it's such a important message when it comes to captivating the imaginations of our customers these days.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. So when you can sit
Yes.
down and think about what their marketing struggles are and how to make their products more effective for them, and you bring that to them in the form of an idea and let them digest it, that helps everybody. And those types of discussions that they may not have had without your involvement, those are things that stay with them forever. So we love that outside
Absolutely.
of the box thinking.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the thing that is going to differentiate your brand from all the other distributors that are likely knocking on that same company's door. And if they're showing up with a catalog, or they're showing up with a, you tell me what you want and I'll give you a quote on it, um, your approach is one that is going to at least stand out, and probably a high likelihood that you're going to use that differentiated approach to win the business. So good on you.
Absolutely.
One more question for you. What advice do you have for your peers who are managing company stores in terms of how to be really successful in this segment in 2021?
Wow, great question. Well, first and foremost, thank you to a lot of our partners, specifically SNS. Inventory levels. I know that with everything going on in the world, what a challenge it's been to keep stock on things that are moving quickly, and not forget about the things that stopped moving quickly for a time period, and keeping those back in. So, first and foremost, picking products that you can rely on, and leveraging your partnerships with your suppliers so that you have good communication on what will come and go and what will be available. Um, a lot of those partnerships are willing to have those conversations. Some of them even have programs where you can list products that you have in programs. And
Right.
expectations manage emotions. So when you don't communicate up
I
front
love
about
that.
what could potentially happen, it's so much harder to have that communication after it's surprised everyone than it is to have that up front. And one of the things that I think is so important right now going into 2021 is, there's been so many different things that have happened over the last year. Are you getting in to meet with those key programs? Are you really listening to them and what they've appreciated about how things have gone? Or if it's a new prospect for you, how well do you understand what they've been doing so that you can, redirect and make improvements to the program?
Right. Well, it's amazing to see how the company's store space has evolved, specifically around things like print on demand, inventory requirements, kitting. I mean, kitting is its whole own conversation. Specifically in those areas, Joel, are you seeing any particular trend that is really challenging your business right now?
We're fortunate to have a decent sized facility. It's about 40,000 square feet, and we've got an awesome team that not only does the decoration, but
Right.
fulfills orders. So, um, one of the biggest requests that we're getting more consistently now is to have our clients' team members hands off and have us put a lot of those projects together. So, things like grouping 3 or 4 products together that maybe aren't size dependent, but we can kit into a box that our clients have on
Right.
hand, ready for any new hire that they make, as a kind of welcome to the team. Nothing says you're here, we're happy you're here, and you have a place, like a couple of awesome items that they can take with them. And so definitely the kitting piece has been a massive request. We also do a lot of inventorying. So some of our bigger programs rely on us to keep those products on the shelf so that their client experience is really great. When somebody orders something, it goes out, same day. And we've seen an increase in online sales. Obviously, people are wanting to access things remotely that they'd normally buy in person. And so um, a lot of our partners that are making use of that are seeing a big uptick in online purchases.
Right. Right. Yeah, I am not surprised at all. And I think those that are positioned that way are the ones that are really going to be positioned for success. Well, Joel, this has been such a pleasure to speak with you. Such admiration for the brand that you've built, and congratulations and all the very best as we chart this new path in 2021. Thank you. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you so much, Mark. Great pleasure to be here, and let's have a safe and wonderful 2021.